Hi, what's up everybody? Welcome to War Within. Again, if you haven't seen my first video, I just talk about how I'm going to be full-time content creating in YouTube and on stream because I'm happy with how my class feels. Again, it's just that simple. I had a feeling that Dragonflight would be best for paving the way for future expansions if they continued to rework and fine-tune the talent system to make them better playstyle and better synergies, and they did that. I mean, I'm going to spend an entire video talking about all the synergies Unholy has right now. Now, I don't think Unholy is tremendously overpowered. I don't think anybody's thinking that. I think in beta, since health pools are really high, maybe your rot is not quite as impactful as you'd like, though I am running some different builds that I'm going to show you right now that address some of those issues. I know that's a little vague, but I'm just about to talk about it for 30 minutes. So these builds are a little different from builds you've probably seen circulating around. As always, I will be very, very thorough and detailed with my explanation. And if you agree with me and you believe in what I'm saying, feel free to give them a try. And if you just have much better luck with your other build, that's totally fine. Like, I want you to find the build that works for you. These are just the builds that I've seen to have the most intrinsic synergy and have worked the best for me so far. And I will be hoping to prove that by actually queuing this game a lot in War Within. So that'll be fun. So yeah, let's get right into it. This is the Unholy Pre-Patch PvP guide, and I will be giving you a fundamental and underlying understanding of the class and its synergies, so when War Within comes out, you will be going in with some knowledge that you might not have had before. If you go down in the bottom left corner here, you can see I've got some silly fantasy names for my builds here. So realistically, it's because I think it's fun, because I'm a dork, but also because I had a build named like Wound, Hybrid, Disease, Magus build, and I was like, this is the stupidest thing I've ever written down on paper. So I changed them to a fantasy name that kind of encapsulates what the build is designed to do. And I thought that was fun. I hope you do not hate it. I'm sorry if you do, because I'll probably be doing it anyway, but this makes it so if you're on my YouTube comment or you're on my stream and you say, hey, what build is that you're running with this comp? I can say the necromancer build, and you'll know what that is. Or you can just be like, hey, does the necromancer build still run these talents? And I'd be like, oh, it's these talents now. And it'll be easy for us to communicate about which build you're talking about. And I like it. So, necromancer build. If you have followed D&D or RPG tropes for a while, you probably know what's coming, but let's go down the line anyway. So the first 5 talents are all locked in, because they are. You just have to take them. And then down here, these are probably locked in as well. You have Fester Strike, Fester Wound damage. You have Diseases, which is a big part of this build, as you'll see in a second. And you have Internal Agony, which increases the duration of Dark Transformation. Eternal Agony is not that important, but it does get you down Reaping and Harbinger. And as you'll see in a second, I'm a big proponent of Death Coil and Death Coil Dam and Sudden Doom. And then you could go Runic Mastery instead of Fester Wound to get down to APOC. You have to do one of them because you have to get down to APOC. But I don't think Runic Mastery, even though Resource Gen is kind of nice now that we don't have as much as we used to, I still think Festering Wound damage is just more valuable, and I think everybody else agrees. Then you have, as promised, this disease package here, Foul Infections, Plaguebringer, which makes all your diseases do more damage, Ebon Fever, which now makes all of them do more damage in half the time, so even more damage. And then that is all affected by Superstrain, which is what gives you the additional diseases. So if you're brand new to the game in this expansion, welcome. We have 3 types of diseases that look like a 2, but my fingers are webbed. Virulent Plague, Frost Fever, and Blood Plague, and all of these are now buffed. This is unique to War Within by Ebon Fever, and now, and Plaguebringer already was, but Ebon Fever is new. So that's a lot of disease mods from just these 4 talents, 4 being Unholy Blight as well. Well, 5 because of the enabler of everything, Superstrain, but 4 from Unholy Blight is now tied to Dark Transformation, which is not terrible. You know, it's just freeing up a button. So now when you press Dark Transformation, instead of having to do Dark Transformation and then Unholy Blight, you can just press 1, and it gives them the Unholy Blight debuff, which applies a disease, and then another disease strictly called Unholy Blight, which is not affected by any of the mods, but just as a nice bit of chip damage, and helps you continue to rot people. Okay, cool. Then you have APOC and Magus, and this is even more chip damage, but this time in the form of pets. You have APOC, which is a huge burst, which will summon some wounds, but what it really summons is a Magus of the Dead, and Magus of the Dead damage is pretty high right now. Then you have the entire Death Coil package, the Execute Death Coil from Reaping, faster Sudden Doom procs, which also buffs the coil damage and gives you more coil procs for Doom Burst and more coil procs for Doomed Bidding. So Doom Burst is the one that makes it burst wounds. That's a PvP talent. We'll talk about that soon. And Doomed Bidding gives you another Magus, so even more chip damage. As in addition to bursting 3 wounds, because that's what Sudden Doom now does. It bursts wound inherently in PvE, and then another 2 from Doom Burst. So you get 3 bursted wounds, a huge Death Coil from the Death Coil damage buff, and a Magus of the Dead. Whew! I went through that a little fast, but this entire package here, Harbinger, Reaping, Improved Death Coil for even more damage, and Cleave Death Coil, Magus of the Dead from the proc, and Coil of Dev for even more Death Coil damage in the form of a dot, is effectively the entire Death Coil package. It makes it so when you press the 4 keybind Death Coil with it glowing, because it's got a little circle that makes it glow when you have a proc, it's going to do a lot of things. Slow them, damage, more damage, dot damage, summon a pet. So that's all really, really, really dang good. Then you go down this line, like I promised, to grab Morbidity, which is all your diseases will now make you just do more overall damage. Extra Shadow damage, which is effectively all of this rot damage. And then Superstrain in the first place, which is the entire disease package, is enabled by Superstrain. Then you have Army of the Dead and Raise A-Bomb. Now, Raise A-Bomb is a pet, so it has synergy with active minion decomposition, where your active minions are extended. This also extends your Magus of the Dead. So now you have all of these chip damage minions, A-Bomb, APOC ghouls, and Magus, all being extended by your Virulent Plague flaring up, which happens more often because you have the mods that make them tick more quickly and tick more quickly again. So you effectively have a good amount of extra disease damage from decomp, but also then Magus damage, which is more chip damage. So you have all of these different sources of rot without really sacrificing your huge chunks from big wounds from bursting sores, right? Big wound burst, big wound burst, big wound burst, big death coil, big death coil, big death coil. So you have sustain at a range and then burst at a range. So it's like the every source of damage build where you just have damage from your dots, damage from your pets, damage from you, damage from your button presses, damage from everything you do. And Raise A-Bomb is a good way of kind of bringing that together where right now he's bugged. So I have to be truthful. Right now he does not get proper attack power. So if you see him really low on your damage, before when Raise A-Bomb was in the game, his main value was applying wounds, because wounds are insanely beneficial for us. Wound generation is even more important now that we burst 3 wounds with every proc death coil. But so wound generation is massive. But then he also did like a million other things, like he pulled people out of stealth and applied your diseases for free. So you never had to waste a single rune or a single global pressing outbreak because you had Unholy Blight and Raise A-Bomb. So he's just applying those things. And he broke people out of stealth because he has such a big aura around him. He could still break people out of stealth by pressing him on somebody who's out of stealth and then running him into somebody else, or like gripping the person and then he'll just run through. Or if they're next to the guy who, like even if they're not that close, but they're somewhere in the tri-state area of the guy you put it on, he'll probably pull them out because his range is so big. But he also does damage. He doesn't do damage right now because of that bug, but assuming they fix it, he also does damage, which will only be extended by decomp, which will also extend the amount of wounds that he can apply to somebody. So yes, it's 2 talents to get down here, which is kind of brutal because you could do something like this, which then gives you, and this is another version of this build. So I should put this on the screen for a little while so you can see. You can actually drop Army A-Bomb, because really Army A-Bomb is just A-Bomb. And you will get extra strength for Festermite, like a lot of extra strength. And that will give you more overall damage, but you lose like the torrent of value gained from Raise A-Bomb. The disruption, the disease application, a billion wounds for more necrotic wounds, for more doom burst wounds, actual damage from him that lasts 30 seconds and will be extended, right? So if you want to just make it all about disease, rot, your core damage, and your death coil damage, and everything just getting as much as it possibly can, just do this. I'm leaving it up on the screen so you can see. This talent is called Festermite. It's been in the game for a while, so I didn't say it initially, but if you need to know, it's called Festermite, and it gives you more strength. That's what it does. But if you want like the the combination of ebon value, then go this route. And that's the necromancer build. You can either all in necromancer by getting one more pet, or you can buff your other pets and your diseasey, rotty necro damage with Festermite. Okay, so there you go. There's one build. Now this build, as the name suggests, is pretty different. And it uses a talent that I don't think I've seen anybody run, but I actually have some high hopes for it. So this build, let's talk about the similarities first. The similarities are effectively the whole disease package, but now is changed also into Clawing Shadows. This Death Coil package all the way down to Superstrain because you get Morbidity, which increases your own damage, and Death Rot, which increases your shadow damage. The entire top is all the same. But there are some differences now. One, you have Ghoulish Frenzy. This gives you another modifier both to your damage, to your pet's damage, but then also to your attack speed. And attack speed means sudden doom procs. Now, sudden doom procs, you already saw how valuable they are, but now we're also in Rotten Touch because I chose Clawing Shadows. Clawing Shadows does damage at a range and does more damage because it scales entirely off your mastery. So it has really high synergy with Rotten Touch, which makes it do even more damage every Death Coil proc. And you're going to be getting Death Coil procs like crazy when you have Harbinger of Doom and faster attack speed during every Ghoulish Frenzy, Dark Transformation, right? So that's Clawing, that's Rotten Touch, we talked about that, that's Ghoulish Frenzy. Now, of course, you're grabbing Festermite for this because it's as much upfront damage as you can add. And then you're sacrificing Decomp for that and Doomed Bidding. And then you're sacrificing the whole middle row. Now, I know this looks absolutely crazy, and that's totally fair. But hear me out for a second. This is not a decomp, necro, doomed bidding, Magus build. It's all focused on how much damage you can do. And it is a lot. I'll show you on the dummy in a second. It's pre-patch, but who cares? I'll show you. So you don't really need the Magus. It's just one Magus every 45 seconds or so anyway. You don't really need this guy, which means you don't need this guy. Because APOC is 4 wounds, but Doomburst Death Coil proc is 3. That's just one less wound. But the Doomburst Death Coil proc is all the time, and APOC is a 45-second cooldown. The general value of APOC is that huge burst and then summoning a Magus, but you don't need that because you have 3 wounds all the time, and you don't need to go down this line, right? Because you don't need that value. You're trying to put as much damage into your button presses as humanly possible. That's what this build does. You have tools for that. Festermite, Bursting Sores, A-Bomb for massive wound generation. Then you can spend it Clawing, and you can spend it Harbinger. And then you have one more cool tool. Because you have so many wounds bursting and so many wounds generating, all at a range, you can then effectively get Festering Scythe up a lot of the time, which is giving you a massive generator button that does huge wound generation to an AoE, and does more damage because it converts it into shadow damage. So this Festering Scythe all of a sudden will proc just as part of your rotation. And Unholy always does damage. You don't need to set this up. You don't need to track it. You'll just see it. It'll start glowing. It literally will. Like it's going to glow. It's going to be like, ooh, shiny, right? And you can just randomly just do a Grip Blind War Stomp if you're a cow, but just a Grip Blind go. Generally, Unholy doesn't really benefit that much from doing a go, but you can because you still have double grip, you have asphyxiate, you have blind, you could have war stomp. You can lock people in an area with double chains, big slow, grip blind, and then you can fester strike, D&D cleave it all. And it's crazy with all of these wound modifiers. And then you have Death Coil cleave wounds, Death Coil cleave wounds burst, Big Rotten Touch, which will now cleave your Clawing Shadows in the D&D on the ground. You can set this entire thing. Oh, one sec. D&D cleave is really important to have if you're talking about D&D cleave. Haven't switched that one on this version yet. So you can effectively set up a Frost-esque Unholy AoE burst go, and then just go right back to doing Unholy's never-ending range sustained damage. It's really disgusting. I've played with it in a solo shuffle. It just does that. It does that. Exactly what I said. You're just always doing damage, and then Grip Line comes back up. You press it. I use my War Stomp. I throw down a D&D, and then I Fester Scythe them. And then I cleave with Clawing, cleave with Clawing, cleave with Clawing. And it takes 40% health people, and then just does this to their health. Boop. Like you could just do it for yourself and watch. It just go, doop. They go straight to 0. It's fun. It's absolutely crazy. So yeah, this is a wound spike. It's a wound focused, upfront damage, heavy. So let me show you. Let me show you because I promised. So you get your A-bomb out. You get your Dark Transform out because that's also going to be Unholy Blight. So your A-bomb down, Dark Transform, then you walk up to the guy and you Unholy Assault. And then instead of APOC, because you literally don't even have it, you just spend with Clawing, spend with Coil, spend with Clawing, spend with Coil. And again, the grip line D&D goes if there's multiple targets, but just watch the extra pressure here. So there's the diseases coming down. And then you just claw, claw, claw. And then you get a Coil and then watch this. Poop! That just bursts everything. Wait, more. Poop! And look at this. You're already back up to 4 because of you and your A-bomb. So you need another Coil. Oh, there comes Poop. And you're just always doing this much damage. Just always. Because you're not waiting on anything. You're not waiting on any cooldowns. You don't need APOC. You just alternate your button presses over and over. And there's that Fester Scythe. I told you it would glow. So just to show you what it looks like, you would just Fester Scythe. Look at that. 2 wounds on everything. Then you would D&D, clawing everything. Right? It's crazy how much additional damage that adds. It's actually crazy. So you just Fester Scythe, sorry, I gotta make sure I say that right every time. D&D, and then clawing through all of them. And you're just going to add a random amount of 400 KOE damage. In pre-patch, it's gonna be much higher with the new health pools, but it's fun. It's really fun. You always have damage, and then sometimes you have unlimited damage. Okay, I explained that enough, right? Sometimes I talk for 20 minutes when I should only be talking for 5 minutes. Did I explain that well enough? Okay, good. Good. Hopefully that's true. Okay, so now we're going to look at the PvP talents. Doomburst, I've talked about the entire video. It is the thing that enables everything I've talked about. It bursts 2 wounds. It's why you don't need as much wound bursting. It gives them a 90% slow, which is just really disruptive when you're also taking a huge chunk of damage at the same time. Necrotic wounds, all of this wound bursting. It's now also a heal for you, which increases your survivability, which we already have a ton of. And then it's a stackable Mortal Strike. Still as relevant as it was since it was released. And then you have a variable third. Strang, if you're playing with somebody who has a lot of stuns. Right now, you're not Frost, so you don't have all the stuns that they have. So you might need Asphyxiate if you don't really have any stuns in the comp. But if you do, you have an option. Let's say you're playing with a Rogue. Unholy Assassin was actually an insanely good comp at the end of last expansion. So if you're playing that again and he has Kidney every go, he also has Silence every go. You could effectively do it on the go he doesn't have a reset for, but now they have double vanish. So maybe Assassin is a bad example. Maybe it's more like DH. DH is a good example. They have double stun, right? Fell Eruption and Chaos Nova. But now your Silence doesn't overlap with Garrote, and it's just a 5-second, 45-second cooldown, 20-yard range, off DR answer for any healer in the game. It's a huge button. So you don't need the Asphyxiate because he has, let's say this is your go, right? You're doing insane amounts of damage to a guy. Chaos Nova is the 2 people you're on, and then Fell Eruption's the other healer, right? And he puts that stun on him. Then he puts an Imprism on him. And now they're getting very, very dangerously low. And it's like, oh, do we have any follow-up? Of course you do, because you have a 5-second instant silence at a 20-yard range. You just follow it up. And that's insane to deal with. 5 seconds is a long time. Imagine pressing a Pressing Roar silence. Do you guys know the dragon? I'm just saying that as if you know it. There's a dragon ability called a Pressing Roar that increases the duration of all your CC. You can have a 7-second silence off DR on these guys. Absolutely ridiculous. Okay, so Strang's a good button. Necrotic Aura, all your damage is magical, so if you play with another magical player, it actually still could have value. You could play Unholy Ellie right now with Necrotic Aura, and you guys would be absolutely loving it. Spell Warden is a really nice tool. It gets people out of CC. It shortens the cooldown of your AMS. AMS has a ton of value, which we'll be talking about once we get to the left side tree. Bloodforged could actually have value. Unholy is a sustain class, so it loves to be able to stay in. With the amount of survivability you have, adding Bloodforged could be an answer. I don't think I'll ever choose it because it's just one of those situations where there's always something that feels a little better. I'd probably just run Strang or Spell Warden for CC or Necro Aura for the most damage in game playing DKLE. But if somehow you're having trouble surviving, you sure wouldn't against Warriors and Windwalkers if you put on Bloodforged armor. I am not a Necro Bargain guy. I'm certainly not a Necro Bargain when I'm talented out of APOC, but there's going to be a lot of builds that still run APOC, including the one I already showed you. So it's not like I'm saying it's trash, but I still don't run Bargain ever. I think you sacrifice as much as you gain from Crypt Fever to your pets. The cooldown reduction is nice, but again, we're in the era of the most wound bursting death coil of all time. So getting short cooldown APOC, I mean, just doesn't feel that great to me. So it's a PvP talent that's like, okay. You're kind of just like, you lose the PvP talent slot, you get a little bit there, but there's more in String, and there's more in Spell Warden. I mean, if you AMS a trap, your healer just told you is the best DK I've ever played with, right? They're probably used to sitting every trap, but now you can take one off, right? And again, Necrotic Aura is going to add way more damage than Bargain ever would, so if you really want output, in fact, God, I'm convincing myself even harder. This is an output button. Necro Bargain is output. It doesn't do any utility. It's for more output, more pressure, more goes. If you really want that, just make your goes stronger. Necrotic Aura. It definitely does more overall output gain than Bargain does. So I'm staying by that. People can argue me if they want. That's totally fine. Feel free. That's what freedom of speech is, man. Tell me your thoughts. Okay, left side of the tree. So you have a lot of survivability additions now. You still got your big AMS short cooldown, but now you also have magic damage reduction, just flatline from null magic, and lesser debuffs. So dots and slows and other disruption, all reduced by a ton on you. That's incredible. You have this Will of Necropolis line that's also added by Blood Draw, giving you a 10% wall and shorter, or less cost death strikes. So now you can rebound a little easier. You have support for your teammates with Vestigial Shell. You have double grip with, where is double grip so I can actually hover over it when I say that? Oh, double grip with grip damage reduct. So every time you grip somebody, you're also taking a little bit less damage, which in Dragonflight version of DK wouldn't have mattered at all. But now you have all of these various types of damage reduction, like the Osmosis gives you healing. Well, let's talk about the damage reduction first. There's like one that's armor. Oh yeah, it's right above it. This gives you armor and chance to be critically strike reduced. That's just a little bit of chip damage reduction, more healing, chip damage reduction, more healing, right? And then even some of your big tools for healing, like Veteran of the Third War. This is just one talent instead of two. So you just get the full stamina benefit with only having to invest once. Now you got your zone, and now you can go into Gloom Ward, which gives you more absorbs, which is AMS. And it's permafrost if you want to run it. I've actually seen people run permafrost on Unholy despite you not having the big auto attack speed from Frost, just because you have a lot of strength modifiers and a big heavy two-handed weapon, and it just gives you an absorb shield that's buffed by Gloom Ward. So it's not the end of the world. It's also buffed by your versatility, of course. And then you have bigger Runeforge healing from Fallen Crusader, which is also nerfed in War Within, the Fallen Crusader healing, but I think that's because we have so much more survivability. They're getting on top of it. And if that's true, then we're not going to expect 50% nerfs to every defensive button that we have at the beginning of this expansion, cough, cough, Dragonflight. So that would be really exciting. We might go live like this and really have a playable, functional, fantastic class. So yeah, anyway, you have Lichborn Wall that you take by default. So now you have 15% damage reduction here as well. So you have, there, did I make it very clear? You have so many sources of damage reduction and healing and damage reduction and healing, and then even more healing here, that you'd put this in here and you just have this overarching survivability that persists at all times. It kind of feels weird because like it's just 6%, but when you put everything together, you're tanky. And that's what you need to be as a Death Knight, tanky. And you are. So I also pretty much went through the entire tree while talking about that, because you pretty much have that healing, self-sustain, right, from stamina. Big zone for healing, 3 million. Jeez. There's Asphyxiate, which is your CC. Wraith Walk, which is Root Break, which you desperately need as a DK. Extra damage from diseases. You got your Ghoul, of course. You got D&D Speed and D&D Cleave. We were already talking about that when I talked about that whole Festering Strike thing. And Holy Bond makes you have more strength during your proc goes. You have your self-sustain and survivability options down here. You have Death Grip to peel for your teammates. Fast D&D, fast Death's Advance. AMS for your teammates is really, really impactful. You have Blind for peels, Double Chains for peels, attack speed for more Death Coil procs. You have your kick. I mean, your tree is just filled with good options that you want to take. And that's what the DK rework did. So there you go. These are the builds that I'm running. Of course, they will be linked in the description below. And that's all the reasons why. Woundspike is a very bizarre build. I urge you to try it if you love it and the spikiness at a range where you're constantly bursting people feels good to you in pre-patch. See what happens with the additions in the hero talents. If it doesn't, try the necromancer build. This has more traditional things that I've seen a lot of people running, and the amount of death coil procs you get with Doom bidding makes your sustain so high. This is what I have high hopes for Unholy. And those are the talents that I believe. I will briefly touch on gearing and rotation, but I know that everything is subject to change when we get entire new aspects of our class. Gearing, I still just do, my gear is set up for Frost right now, but I would just go Haste Master Reverse on every piece. You don't get any value for crit. Frost finally does, but Unholy does not. There is nothing in your entire talent line that says crits are valuable for you. So you would, if you were to gear Unholy in War Within or now, you would say, I'm going to get every stat except for crit, and I will never get crit if I don't have to, and I don't think you have to. Which means, of course, you're going to run Insignia and not Badge, because Badge has crit on it. Fallen Crusader. Rune of the Epoch got a ton of buffs. I heard people talking in the PvE channel, and I was really bummed about this, that it still underperforms Fallen Crusader. I am going to try it more. I'm not putting in this video because it's something that I think really needs War Within's entire toolkit to see if like having an additional Mortal Strike, and do we need the extra survivability, and how much does that disease actually do, right? And any other synergies that come out of the new talent trees. But unfortunately, I've seen in the PvE, and you can correct me, PvE people, if I'm wrong, I've seen that Fallen Crusader is still just better for overall output. So it would have to rely on the utility and the Mortal Strike to pull ahead. And I will test that. I will test that in War Within. So check back in the next video. But those are all my thoughts on the gearing stuff. It's just Haste Master Reverse. And the rotational stuff, I'm back on the disease build here. Pretty much you just have to keep your diseases up at all times. And now they're going to come off really fast in Ebon Fever. So you have to be looking at that. You have different ways of applying diseases. Raise A-Bomb applies them all. Dark Transform applies them all. So don't even bother pressing Outbreak in the opener. Here, watch this. There's all your diseases, right? There's all your diseases. There's your big APOC. And then you just alternate, right? You need max wounds for a death coil because it bursts them all, right? You need at least 3 or more. And then, look, I'm only at 2. Press a Fester. Now I'm at 6. Pop them all. Pop them all. Oh, that probably was so much burst damage if I was actually in PvP. But you just need to keep Scourge Striking occasionally and reapply your diseases. But Scourge Strike occasionally to keep your buff of Plaguebringer back up. You can see it's about to fall. Now it's not, because you press Scourge Strike as part of your rotation. Not really something you're going to have to micromanage, because you're going to be using your rotational ability Scourge Strike. But you can see your damage never really runs out. I'm literally talking this entire time, trying to explain it, showing stuff on the bars, and you're just going to be doing, I don't know, 300k. Every time you get a Death Coil proc, you just spike somebody from across the map. There's my APOC coming out because I had 4 wounds and it came off the cooldown. You would want to press D&D in cleaving situations, but really even in a 2 cleave situation, because it also gives you 5% haste, and haste is a great stat for you. And there you go. You just rotate those 2 buttons over and over and over and over, and you never run out of damage. You would always, if they kite you, you're still doing damage because of all your diseases and pets. If they kite you, you're still doing damage because of Death Coil. And you can also swap targets very, very easily, especially with Infected Claws and your Raise A-Bomb putting wounds on everybody, because A-Bomb is an idiot and Infective Claws is cleave. And that's it. That's Unholy going into it. If there's anything you have comments on, please tell me. If there's anything that you think I might have missed, talk about it. I will respond to all of these comments like I've been doing, and we will have a conversation. There's been times in my comment section where I was like, oh my God, that's a great point. And I love doing that, because not only does that make you feel validated, it also gives me more interaction with the community, which is just a great thing. Okay. I hope this helped. This is what I've been playing, and it feels really strong. We'll see how things look in War Within. Peace. Take care, and thanks for watching.